Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar this week on Shop Floor Insight for Business Central. What we're here to talk about today, of course, is Shop Floor Insight. And Shop Floor Insight, really is the execution part of your manufacturing process. So it's really relying on the manufacturing execution side there, providing the capabilities for manufacturing execution. But around that are another number of other tools that you can use within your manufacturing environment to streamline it. So those ones are, starting over at the side here, the enhanced planning pack. So that'll allow you to sort of do your planning, to do some of your forecasting, the production analysis after you've completed your production. That's sort of what you do to sort of run your MRP, get everything planned. And then we send that off to a scheduling tool. And that scheduling tool can be as simple as, the graphical scheduler, which is a Gantt chart. You can drag and drop your production orders and move things around and manage your production that way. Or if you want to get more advanced and just want to do an automatic production schedule where I hit a button and my schedule is done. I don't have to drag and drop or look at a Gantt chart or anything else. I hit a button and I've got a production schedule that we can actually execute on the shop floor as is. And then of course, once it gets to the shop floor, we're using Shop Floor Insight to execute on those production orders. So we're going to capture labor, we're going to capture quality information, we're going to do output, we're going to do consumption, we're going to do all of those sorts of things, capture all of that data on the shop floor that you need really to understand what's happening in the shop floor, and also feed that information back in to the scheduling system. So now we've got this real-time feedback loop that says, hey, yeah, we were scheduled to do an hour's worth of work today. He did half an hour. But when we reschedule that, we know how much time is left, and we can, address that within the subsequent schedules. All right, and then from there, you've generated inventory. You can now send it off to the fulfillment worksheet, which will allow you to plan what you're going to pick and ship on a daily basis or hourly basis, and potentially Warehouse Insight or WMS Express. That gives you all that ability now to manage that inventory with barcodes if you like. And Warehouse Insight can also do some of that consumption and output as well on a tablet or something like that at the end of the line. So it works in conjunction with Shop Floor Insight to capture some of that production information if you want. You don't need Warehouse Insight to do consumption output. You can do that with Shop Floor Insight, but this gives you the ability to choose the right tool for the job. And then finally, to go and ship it, I talked a little bit about OrderShip Express, which is the free version, or you can use Dynamic Ship, which can do LTL shipping, so it can get your rates, select a carrier, schedule a pickup, all of that kind of stuff through Dynamic Ship for both LTL and parcel shipments. So that's kind of the full gamut. Well, there's a few additional products in here I didn't mention. That's a good overview of the different tools that are available for Business Central to streamline your manufacturing operations. But of course, we're focusing here on Shop Floor Insight today. Now, Shop Floor Insight capabilities, the key one here is barcoded data collection. So we make it very easy for people to record what they've done within the facility. And that does a lot of things. It's not just capturing your costs against a production order or a job or fixed assets or service or things like that. It's also that traceability. So if you're in an environment where you need that traceability, you've got a warranty claim, or you've got certifications you need to adhere to, you know exactly who did what and when they did it. And for the employees, it's just a quick beep, beep. It's like the old Roadrunner cartoons. They go beep, beep, and they run off and they do their work. We can also, however, if you don't want to do barcoding, if you want to go paperless, we can do touchscreen data entry. We can do manual entry with mouse and keyboard, and we can use mobile devices, right? So phone or a tablet, if each employee has their own device. And that can be handy if you're doing sort of field service type stuff with jobs. You can go and use a handheld device to record your time. And all of these other goodies. We're going to cover off most of this within the demo. A few things I probably won't cover too much on are the time and attendance and payroll portions, where we can actually act as a punch clock as well. We have a separate punch clock interface that will take photos of people when they clock in the morning and clock out at the end of the day, with an option for facial recognition in there as well. And based on that, we can calculate overtime, double time, things like that, and send it off to your payroll system as a file or within Business Central. And we can also do light shift scheduling. So you can say Joe is working days this week and evenings next week, and you can set up that schedule. And that schedule may impact the payroll calculations. They may get a shift differential or something like that. So we've got that whole payroll integration and time and attendance portion of the solution as well. What we're going to focus on mostly today is capturing time against production orders. All right, now a couple other things just before I get in. What we're going to be looking at is an environment where I'm coming in and treating it like a fixed terminal. And what I mean by that is, typically what happens is you have a computer out on the shop floor, what we call a terminal. So just a computer. It can be a PC, it can be a Chromebook, it can be whatever. As long as it can run a web browser like Chrome or Firefox or Edge, usually Edge or Chrome are the ones we recommend. You can go out there and multiple people can come up to that terminal, that PC, and start scanning or using the user interface there to capture what they're working on. Okay, so that's pretty common. And lately, the Chromebook has been one of the more common options for these terminals. It could be an old, Windows 10 PC or something you throw out there or whatever. But the Chromebooks, $150, and it's got a mouse, a touchpad, a keyboard, a monitor, all that built in. No moving fan or anything. You throw it out in the shop, and it works great. So that tends to be one of the more popular options. But you can use anything that can run that web browser. And again, what that allows us to do is, if you've got a machining area, maybe it's got 4 machines in it, you might have one terminal there that each of those operators can just walk up to, walk a few feet and indicate what they're doing. Or you may have a boring mill, or maybe it's a food prep line, or like a mixer or something like that, where you have one dedicated terminal for that specific work center. So it's up to you how you lay those out. You can have as many of those in the facilities you like. They can be shared or they can be dedicated to a specific machine. The other option that you have is the personal device interface. So that allows you to, again, use a phone or a tablet where people can just swipe, production order to clock on or clock off, or a job to clock on and clock off, and they can manage this on their own personal device. Okay, so there's a few things that you can do there, and we'll jump into that a little bit as we get into the demo. And before I go into the demo, I'll just show you this picture here of a sample station. When this picture was taken, that had been actually in use for over 10 years. And, they fabbed a little aluminum case around it. But, they've got this laminated sheet of barcodes here. This is for non-productive time and fixed assets and things like that. But people would just walk up, scan, what they're working on, and walk off and do their job. So this is a pretty, decent example of how you might use that. This happens to be a welding shop, a job shop here, but that type of system, and this is just running on a little thin client, that type of system is pretty common. All right, now one last thing when we're talking about those terminals, if you are running Business Central Cloud, one of those terminals ideally would be Windows, or if you have a Windows machine, a laptop, or something on the facility, because of the way we deploy the solution. We deploy the solution with an on-prem application. So there is one terminal that needs to be running a Windows application that actually does the communication with Business Central. That significantly streamlines the setup and configuration and everything else. And security, because all those terminals on the shop floor talk to this one little service, this one little app, and that app is the only thing that needs to be configured to talk to Business Central. So keep that in mind. If you install the trial version off AppSource and you want to give it a shot, you do need to install this local service. Again, it doesn't have to be on a server or anything. It can be on a laptop or a cheap PC or whatever, one of the shop terminals, and that's actually going to communicate with Business Central for you. All right. Now, one last thing before I jump into the demo, quick example of the types of barcodes I'll be scanning. So I'll be doing a lot of barcode scanning. We'll show you the touchscreen stuff as well. But when we're scanning barcodes, these are the types of barcodes that I'm scanning, right? So this is the employee badge that's generated from the system, from within Business Central, and you can put your own logo or the employee's picture or whatever you want on there. You can customize that report. But really what we care about is the barcode. They're going to scan that to identify themselves to the terminal. Now, we can also do things like if you have a door access card, right? They have an RFID card for getting into the door. We can integrate with those as well. There's lots of things we can do beyond the barcodes, but the barcodes tend to be the simplest and most accessible approach to get into the system. You can also have them type in their user ID into the system if you like, but one quick beep and I'm in the system and I can't screw it up, that's what you want. And here's a portion of the sample shop floor traveler. So the production order that's printed out, and it's got a barcode for the setup time and a barcode for the runtime, And this is what people are going to scan to clock their time. So they've got one barcode to scan to identify the operation, the production order line number, the production order number, all that stuff, and we're good to go. Okay, so that's an example of what I'll be scanning. All right, so with that, let's actually jump in and see what this thing looks like. So I'm going to come in here, and this is the user interface that you would see running in the web browser. Now, this is actually a web browser. This is Edge, and it's just running in application mode, so I don't see the URL or anything else like that. But this is just, Chrome or Edge. This is the web browser interface running. So this would be, if we're doing a shared terminal, this is what's living out on the shop floor. And employees will walk up to this and, as it says, scan their badge to log in. Now, if you have a dedicated terminal, so maybe you're at a mixing area in a food plant or something like that, and it's going to be one person working at that area all day, you can scan on and it'll just stay scanned on for that entire day. In my case, it's a shared terminal, so it kicks me off after I scan in. So as an employee, what I do is I walk up to the terminal and I'm going to scan my badge now to unlock the terminal under my ID. So as soon as I do that, now it's the first time I've done it, and the first time you do it after a couple of hours, it will take a second to connect because it's now connecting to Business Central, and Business Central web services have to start up and everything else. But normally it's once you're actually up and running, it's pretty much instant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scan my badge again to lock the screen, and I'll just do it again. Now that it's somebody scanned in once for the day, the next time I scan in, it's going to be pretty much instant, and we've unlocked the screen under my ID down here. So what we see here, this is my default view. As this employee, this is my default view for shop floor. And it shows me my time card for the day. And my time card is blank because I haven't done anything yet this day. This is the first time I've clocked in for the day at 11:15. I haven't done anything yet, so there's no activities to show. So the next thing I would do, now if you're doing paper-based, the next thing I would do is simply scan the barcode of the activity that I'm going to be performing. In this case, it's going to be a production order. So simply go in, I scan the barcode from that production order. And again, it's just firing up the web services for the production order here. Once you've done it once for the day, again, it's pretty much instant after that. So that took a few seconds to load up. The next one I scan will be pretty much instant. And so what it did when I scanned that, it brings in, the item that I'm producing, the description, the default work center, which I can scan to change that if I like. So if I've got a shared terminal and everything's scheduled at my welding booth work center and I want to, say I specifically worked on it in bay 2, I could scan bay 2 to indicate what I've done. But really, all I have to do is scan my badge, scan what I'm working on, and then I walk off and I do my work. Okay? So simple as that. Now I leave and the screen locks after, in my case, I think 60 seconds. You can set it to whatever you like, or I can scan my badge again to lock the screen so nobody sees my time entries for the day. Now I go off and I do my work. An hour goes by or whatever it happens to be. I'm done that work. So I come back to the terminal. I scan my badge again to unlock the screen, and then I scan the next thing that I'm working on. And you know what we're going to do? We're going to do some cleanup. And so what I did there was I scanned what we call a non-productive code. And that non-productive code is anything you like. So up here at the top, these are some of the non-productive codes I have defined. So if you're not using barcodes, I could have just selected it from this list, using touch screen or mouse and keyboard. And we've got things like, cleaning or toolbox meeting or training or first aid or whatever you want to put in there. And well, actually, I'll show you this in a bit. When I select a production order, we get a bunch more options we can choose from. But down here on this one, I clocked into that. And as soon as I did that, it clocked me out of my previous activity. So it calculated out the runtime, and I scanned the runtime barcode. Otherwise, it would have done the setup time if I'd scanned that. And that time is in hours. You can change that to minutes or days or whatever you want. Well, actually, not whatever you want. Minutes, days, or hours, I think, are the supported options. And we can clock in on whatever unit of measure we like, and it tracks that for us automatically. And now you'll notice here that if I do the up arrow key, I can actually come in and edit this time if I like. So I can come in here and, if I'm working on one thing for 5 hours that day, instead of clocking in and clocking out, I can set it up so that I just, at the end of my shift or whatever, I scan the production order that I worked on and type in the amount of time I've spent. So that's great if you have, less than diligent workforce, let's say, where you don't want them clocking in and clocking out, or you want to give them the ability to edit that time if they forget to clock in or clock out. You can also disable this so that only a supervisor can make edits to this time. But by default, what it's done is it's come in and it's looked at when I clocked in and when I clocked out, and it's calculated out that elapsed time. And this is very simple for the employees, right? Like if you've got paper out there, like you're putting out drawing packages with travelers and everything else, I walk up and I go beep, beep, I scan my badge, scan what I'm working on, and I go off and I do my work. And what I'm working on can be anything. It can be production orders, it can be non-productive time, it can be a fixed asset, it can be a job, pretty much anything you like, you can do. So if I'm doing some maintenance on one of the assets, I can scan that as well and bring in, maintenance work into the system as well. So there's all these different things that you can capture time against. So again, we support jobs, production orders, service orders, fixed assets, and this non-productive time up here. All right, so that's the basics, right? Beep, beep, and that's all you do. But now let's go into a situation where maybe I don't have, the paper, the shop floor travelers, or maybe I do, but I want to see what's coming up at my work center for the next hour or day or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, terminal's locked. I'm going to walk up and scan, a different badge. So now I'm clocking in as a different employee, and you'll notice, sorry, I scanned the same badge by mistake. Let's just lock that screen and scan the right badge. There we go. So now I'm in here as Linda. Okay, and Linda, you'll notice she doesn't see her time card for the day. She sees the dispatch list. So she sees this production dispatch list. And this is all the work that's coming up at her work center for the next hour or day or whatever filters you set within Business Central. Because all of the information you see here is coming directly from Business Central. There's no separate database, there's no separate configuration. Everything is in Business Central. Okay. And up here you can see there's a filter, so I can type in description or part of a production order number or part of a job or whatever, and it'll filter this list down to it. And what she can do here is she can come in, and this is where if you're using a touch screen, I can tap on this, tap clock on, and start that work. So I don't need to scan a barcode. I mean, ideally, we still have people scan their badge to clock in because it's quick and easy, but you can have them type their user ID if you want, or like I said, if you've got a key card or something for the door access, we could integrate with that. And I can now select this, hit clock on, and start my work. You'll also notice that over here, I didn't talk about it much on the last view, but over here, she doesn't see what that mark guy saw. She sees this picture thing. And so this is kind of nice because you can tailor the user interface per employee, per group, per terminal. So you can set it up any number of different ways. For Linda, what we have it set up is sort of what we call user configuration, where whatever configuration she sets kind of sticks with her. So if she goes to another terminal, she'll see, this user interface at every terminal she logs into. Somebody else clocking into this won't see Linda's configuration. But what this means is, this picture here, I can have pictures, and as I'm selecting this could be my assembly diagram or, whatever I want to show here. And now we've got a very different user interface for this particular employee. They can come in here, see all the work that's coming up, click on these things to see what they're supposed to be doing. I think the battery box is the only one with an image. They can click on these things to see what they're supposed to do and then start their work by hitting, clock on. And that's basically how it works, right? So very configurable for the users themselves, and you can make it kind of look the way you want. You can choose different columns and different fact boxes over here at the side. And speaking of those fact boxes, let's go back, and I'm going to clock in. Clock into, sorry, I'm using a different barcode scanner. I'm going to switch my barcode scanners. And I'm going to clock in as myself again. And you'll notice over here, what I've got is instead of seeing that picture, in my interface, I see the bill of materials and the work instructions. So when I come into a production order, I'm just going to scan that production order again. When I come into a production order, it shows me my bill of materials, what's expected, what's remaining, my work instructions, so that I can see what I'm supposed to do, and I can also do output as well. So this view here is pretty typical, and again, you can change the size of the various fact boxes and everything else, but I can do point of use consumption here. So if I want to scrap material or whatever, I can actually come in and enter the quantities of the material I'm scrapping or consuming. And if these happen to be lot tracked or serial tracked, I can scan the lot number or serial number here or manually enter it so I can capture that item tracking at point of use. I don't have to scribble it down on a piece of paper or have somebody try to figure out which serial number I used or lot number. I can capture that all right from the screen here, right? So I can default the quantities in, or let's say I used 11 of these because I had to scrap one. It'll let me do it, but it gives me a little warning that says, hey, I'm using more than what's expected. But you can come in and add additional scrap or whatever you like here. So I can do that consumption from this as well. I can also do output. So I can come in here, indicate how many I've completed, how many I've scrapped, select a scrap code, like it was Joe again that wrecked it or whatever. Select all of this stuff, and it keeps track of my entire output history. In addition to what you see here, we can also set up quality inspections so that you're forced to enter some quality attributes when you're doing this output, or we can also output to license plates. So if you're using a warehouse management solution, I want to build up pallets as I'm producing this, we can generate license plates directly from the output screen as well. Okay. Now work instructions, those are nice. You can put whatever you like. And again, this comes right out of Business Central. This is either on the production order or on the specific operation. So you can have whatever work instructions you want on a per operation basis or per work order basis. And when I say work order, I mean, we're dealing with production orders right now, but again, we do support similar capabilities for jobs. I'll show you a job in a bit. But if these work instructions aren't enough for you, you also have the ability to show a lot more information, right? You saw the picture already from Linda's interface, but we can show links. And those links can be anything you like. Those could be videos, Excel sheets, links into Business Central, PDFs, whatever you want to put in there. And the beauty of this is this can either come off the item card or the production order. The beauty of it is now the operator, the employee out on the shop floor can actually click on this, load that up, and review that right there in the shop floor. So this could be a DWG or a PDF or whatever the heck you want to, a link into that, or again, a link right into Business Central if you want. If you want to load up this production order in Business Central, you could have a link for that, open it up, and away you go. All right. And in addition to the links, and maybe I'll just hide one of these guys, we also have the ability to show tooling, which is informational. But if you're using MX APS, we can actually incorporate tooling into the schedule. So both for changeovers and for restricting the schedule based on available tooling. So if you want to do that, that's possible as well. That's using our automated production scheduler. It will prevent you, scheduling production orders that don't have appropriate tooling, and it'll keep track of that tooling and everything for you. But what I was actually going to talk about was the quality inspections. So quality inspections allows us to capture information right here in production. So we can do this a couple of different ways. You can have, like I said, when we do output, we can pop up the quality inspection, or we can have the operator here coming in and entering the information as they're working, or you could have a QC person walking around with a tablet entering that quality information. Or if you have a lab or something like that where you take a sample and take it into the lab, you can also enter all this quality information directly within Business Central. And it also works for inbound receiving and production, or any area within Business Central that you want to add a quality inspection for, you can do that. Even checklists for shipping or for fixed asset maintenance, you can use that quality inspection module. All right, but what it looks like out here in shop floor, what I would do is I want to record my quality information, and this is just an entry form that you define within Business Central. So you go into Business Central and say, these are the things I want to capture for this type of product or this specific work center or whatever it is, and you can set your tolerances and all that kind of stuff and go in and enter that data. So here I've got a tolerance of 10 to 15. If I put 9.9, that's going to come in and flag it as a failure. So this information is actually captured right within Business Central. And I can go in and I can look for this specific, well, there's no lot number or serial number on this, but this specific serial number or lot number, or this specific production order and operation, what passed, what failed, all of that information is captured right in Business Central with this production order. And as we go through, you can see we've got pass, fail. Here, if I wanted to scan, like a torque wrench serial number or something like that, I could scan into that text box. We can also do, all of these sorts of things. So, if it's poor, it's going to be a fail, obviously, and if it's good or excellent, it's going to be a pass. And this is a lookup to an existing table within Business Central. So you've got a lot of options for how you set up these entry forms. Again, now the operator's entered all this information here in shop floor, and you might do this on, every 100th output or something like that, or whatever you want to set up in there. But I can come in, I can enter all this information, and again, we track this all within Business Central. And if you want more details on how this works, you can also use Power Automate now to alert people that there's a failure, to send Teams messages, emails, create retests, create, non-conformance reports. All that kind of stuff can be done once we've captured this information, either here in shop floor or right in with Business Central. Okay, all right, so that's a little bit of the additional things that we have available. We can come in, we can show, pictures, links, quality inspections, work instructions, consumption, output, all that kind of stuff is possible. And you don't have to use it if you don't want. The simplest is beep, beep, and I'm capturing my time, and I've got that traceability. Okay. Now, speaking of that time capture, a couple other little things. I mentioned I would talk about jobs. So I can scan a barcode to record time against a job, or I can use a job dispatch list and, we'll just come in and grab my demolition task, and I can clock on to that specific job task. So we can also go right down to the planning line level. We can capture time against the planning line or the job task, and away we go. So jobs, production orders, all that work the same. Now, for jobs, it's a little different. Jobs don't support quality inspections, and they don't support a few other little things in there as well. But for the most part, they work pretty much exactly the way production orders do. Okay. And another thing that we can do on production orders, now that I said that the jobs don't support it, but scan in this production order here. One of the things we can do is we can capture rework time against these activities, right? So let's say I come in here and I'm supposed to be working on this assembly operation, and I found an issue, or somebody found an issue, right? I finished assembly, I gave it to somebody else, and they gave it right back to me and said, this is not correct, you need to fix it. Well, I still want to capture my time against this assembly operation, but I want to flag that time as non-conforming time. It's not time that I would normally want to spend on this particular operation. It's something unusual, and I don't want to take the blame for it, right? I don't want my supervisor coming up to me and say, hey, why do you spend 2 hours on this when that's a half-hour job? So I'm going to blame somebody else. And the way I do that is I scan a rework code. And I can also choose that from the dropdown. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to let's blame sales today. So what I did was I scanned a barcode that says any time that's going against this activity here is rework time, and I'm blaming the sales team for that rework. They sold the wrong thing or sold something that wasn't possible or whatever, and now I'm having to fix it. But you can use whatever root cause codes you want. So maybe it was engineering, they gave me the wrong drawing or something like that, and away we go. The value in that, and this is huge, is that we can now accurately report on how much wasted time you have in your facility and what you need to focus on to correct that. Because rework is very expensive, right? If I spend an hour doing rework on this, that's costing me at least 3 hours of time. The hour of rework time, the hour of lost time, I could have been doing something more productive, the original hour of time that didn't go well, all the NCR and QC time and everything else we need to do to address that rework. So it can be very expensive. And if you're not using something like this, you probably have no idea how much rework you're actually incurring within the facility or what the true cost of that rework is. All you know is your margins are lower than you expected. You don't know why and what you need to focus on to correct those issues. Okay, so this alone, in a lot of situations, will pay for shop floor immediately because you'll improve your processes and make everything better. All right. Anyway, you can tell I've been talking too long because I got my timeout set to 60 seconds there, and it timed me out. Let's just go back in as me. And the last thing I'll mention is the ability to do batching. So you can actually go in and, if I've got a sawing operation, or maybe it's a laser cutter, or, mixing operation in foods or something like that. And, I've got 10 production orders that I'm doing simultaneously, or it's a drilling or sawing operation where, each operation takes a few minutes. Well, I don't want to clock in and out every few minutes, or if I've got these 10 things I'm doing simultaneously, I need a way to handle that. So what we're able to do is I can go in, if I've got 10 production orders that I'm working on, I can scan those 10 production orders in at once, and that creates a batch. And when I'm done, I can clock off that batch, and it'll automatically split the time proportionally across all of those production orders that I'm clocked into. And you also have the ability to, pick one of those production orders out of the middle or whatever, and just clock off that single production order. Oh, geez, until I'm talking too long, I'm going to change my timeout. We can clock off a single production order, but generally you clock off that entire batch and you save a ton of time. We're not scanning it out every few minutes. We scan in, 10 production orders. An hour later, we clock off that batch, and it splits the time proportionally based on quantity or expected time, or equally, whatever settings you have. Incidentally, I should mention, the colors here, this light green and this gray, those are all configurable as well. If you don't like my colors, you can choose whatever else you like. All right, so that's the basics, right? We've got the ability to show a whole bunch of information to the employees on the shop floor, or for people who don't need that, we can simply keep it very, very basic, right? Here's the basic stuff that they want to or need to see. They go beep, beep, and they capture their time. And now you've got that actual production time that you can use for, ensuring your margins are accurate, your costing is accurate, those sorts of things. We've got that traceability. If I get a warranty claim 2 months from now, I can see exactly who worked on this, when they worked on it, was there any rework associated with it. All that kind of stuff is stored in Business Central with those production orders and the ledger entries. I've got all that detail at my fingertips very nicely and easily. All right, so that's the basics of this. Actually, I lied. One thing I didn't mention, you also have the ability to see, that dispatch list visually. So there is a graphical scheduler within the shop floor interface as well. So you can actually come in here and, you can kind of see visually what production orders are being scheduled for whatever period of time you've got it set up for. And I can also use this to, clock on and clock off these production orders if you have it in the unlocked view, and also report machine downtime. So I can come in here and report machine downtime right from this view within the shop floor interface as well. Now, most people are not going to use this for a planning tool, and you can change colors and things like that on these production orders here to see high priority orders or whatever you like. But most people are going to be doing this right from within Business Central using our graphical scheduler tool, which again is a free tool. So this is great for the operators or the employees on the shop floor to sort of visually see what's coming up and potentially to report machine downtime if something goes wrong. Or we can go into Business Central and use our graphical scheduler tool to see that information as well, right? So do I have it? There it is. So the graphical scheduler tool, again, is free. It actually does install with shop floor, so you can actually run it from a number of the shop floor screens. But what it allows you to do is go in and see all your production orders or jobs. I added machine loading onto this view because you can customize the views to have whatever information you want. And I can come in here and I can tap on these things and drag and drop and do whatever I want. And this isn't the best schedule ever because it's scheduled everything on Friday afternoon. But if you want a better schedule, that's when you look at our automated production scheduler called MXAPS that will actually schedule this nicely and automatically for you. All right, one last thing before I get into some of the capabilities here within Business Central is just to show you what this thing looks like if we're running on a handheld device. So what I've got here is a device in my hand. This looks just like a phone, and I'm actually going to show you what it looks like. So it looks just like a phone, but this is actually a barcode scanner as well. But this is just running the personal device interface. And this, by the way, is these are the scanners I was using. This guy was causing the issues, so I switched back to this guy. Those are the types of scanners I was using to scan those barcodes for the shop floor. And just as an example of what I was scanning, there's the barcodes I was scanning. All right, now anyway, back to this guy here. On the personal device interface, and there's a view specific for tablets, and there's also one for phones. And the phone one is nice. Well, both are nice. Tells me what's going on for this week. I'm connected to a different company here, so you won't see my time cards that I was just doing. But I can come in and I can say, yeah, I want to look at all the production orders in the system, and I can choose the one I want to clock into, and I can just swipe over to clock into that particular production order or clock off that production order, whatever I want to do there. And if I open this, sorry, I swiped the wrong way. So I can also open this up, just tap it, open it up, and I can also do clock on, clock off from this action bar here and see all the details about that production order and do consumption and output, view the work instructions, all that kind of stuff from this interface as well. So pretty simple. I can come in here, I can swipe to clock on, swipe to clock off. I can look at my time card. I can open this up, clock off from my time card as well. See all of those details here, just like we saw on the shared terminal interface. But now I've got a nice personal interface here I can use, and we can do production orders, or we can use jobs as well. Oops, sorry, my thumb hit the back button on this thing, but I swiped onto the job there, and now I'm clocked into the job, and I've clocked off my production order. So pretty simple, nice little interface. We've got a nice overview of what the employee's been working on for the week, when they clocked in, when they clocked out, all that kind of goodies. And we can see what we're working on today. And we can come in and select the production order or job that we want to clock in or clock, sorry, my thumb keeps hitting that back button there. And clock in, clock off, all of those activities right from this interface. So that's a little bit on the personal device interface. Okay. Let's go back in here. Now, once we've got all of that time recorded within shop floor, there's a few things you can do within Business Central. So one of the key things is the time card approval. And you'll notice, before I get into that, you'll notice there's a bunch of stuff here like attendance verification, biweekly time reports, payroll adjustment. All of that is if you're using the time and attendance capability. So again, we can go in and we can calculate your overtime or your double time, those sorts of things, or shift differential, and summarize that all and send that information to payroll. So now from the time people clock in on a Monday morning till they get their pay stub 2 weeks later, nobody's having to do any manual data entry or anything else. It's managed from within shop floor insight. But again, we're going to focus on the production order stuff. So the time card approval, the way it works is, I've got all these employees that have recorded time within the shop floor, either the touch screen on a terminal or a personal device interface or barcode scanning, or maybe engineering. You've got engineering people and they need to record their time, but they're not on the shop floor. Well, what they can do is they can just go into a time card and they can manually enter their time. So the time card, I can just open up, like I've got a million time cards in here from the beginning of time, but an engineer can actually come in here and just right within Business Central record the time that they spent on specific production orders or specific jobs or whatever they happen to be working on. So it's great for salaried staff as well. It doesn't just have to be for shop floor. You can have salaried staff actually come in right within Business Central and record their time. So this is a time card. It's different than the standard Business Central timesheets. It's part of shop floor insight, but it is better in most ways compared to the timesheets. So you can have employees record their time in these time cards, and it's got a lot more information about what's going on. By the way, this in and out, if you're using the time clock interface, the shop floor time clock interface, we'll take photos when the people clock in and clock out through the time clock so that you know that it was the right people clocking in and clocking out for the day. All right, so anyway, that's yet another way we can capture time within the system, is manually entering it within Business Central. Once all of that time is in, we'll do a time card approval. technically this is an optional step, right? You don't have to have people review the time if you don't want, but it's probably a good idea to have the supervisor come in and review the time that was entered on the shop floor. So the way this is set up to only show the employees I manage. I happen to be super user, so I see everybody's anyway. And I'm going to show the open cards as well. So what an employee will do is they'll come in, the next day, and they'll see, one time card for, each person that reports to them from the previous day, basically, or the last shift. And so this is not really accurate data. If I have 10 people reporting to me, I'll see 10 time cards in this list. And what I'll do as a supervisor, I'll look for anything that's red. What red means is there's a validation error. Validation error means that there's potentially something wrong with this time card, okay? And what this time card does, it tells me, when they clocked in, who it was, when they clocked in for the day, when they clocked out for the day. And this calculated clock in and clock out is, again, the time and attendance portion where you can set up rounding, right? If I clock in at 11:15, maybe that rounds me up to 11:30 or something like that. If I clock out at 11:35, maybe that rounds me down to 11:30. You can set up those rounding rules for payroll purposes. But again, what this does is tells me that I've got some sort of problem on this time card. And if I select this time card, over here, it's going to tell me what those issues are. So the first one is, I was supposed to work, whatever it is, 9 hours, and I only worked a quarter hour. And then it's got some other stuff here that tells me I've got issues. Like I did record time on a job, but I'm not set up to record time on jobs, so now it's giving me a warning. And what this does, if I go and look at the details on that time card, this is actually the time card that I did through the shop floor interface. You'll see it's highlighted a bunch of fields in red here, telling me exactly where the problems are on this particular time card, right? So as a supervisor, I can actually come in here and fix it. I might just ignore these setup times because I don't care. But here, I might say, yeah, they forgot to clock out. I'm just going to make that an hour or whatever. And we're done, right? And you notice it's still red because we need to go in and revalidate it. Now, when I revalidate it, why the heck is it still red? Well, because I've got a rule that says, hey, if I exceed the runtime by a specific amount of time, give me a warning. So this was supposed to be 25-minute runtime. I entered an hour. It's now telling me that, hey, there might be a problem with this time entry. And me as a supervisor looking at it, it's like, oh, that was rework. Of course, it's going to be more time. I'm okay with that. Okay? So the supervisor can come in here, do an exception-based approval, look for anything that's red, make those corrections if they want or not. They don't have to. And then when they're done, they just select all or select whatever time cards they want, hit approve, and we're set. So what that means is if I've got 10 people reporting to me or 20 people reporting to me, it might be 5 minutes of my day to zip through this and approve all of that time and validate that everything is actually correct. And it's going to go into, the job costing and the production orders with the appropriate costing and times and everything else. Okay. All right. So that's a little bit on the approvals. And then there's a bit more, like, again, if you've got it implemented with payroll, you can export that to payroll and everything else. Now, a couple of little things that I'll mention. This routing analysis tool, that is really handy. It comes with our enhanced planning pack. And what that will do is it will actually go in and tell me, I just don't know if I have a good routing on here to look at. Let's find out. I'll just leave everything blank. Yeah, so I got a little bit of data here. So what this is doing is it's going in and it's looking at my actual times and it's comparing it to the expected times on those routings. And it's telling me what the difference is. So this one is massive, right? So, I've got a 95% difference between my expected times and my actual times. I probably need to go and correct that. And the way I do that is I can just click on this and change the runtime for that routing right here. This guy here, it's only a 5% difference. So that's probably pretty good, right? Like 9.48 hours or minutes or whatever that is compared to 10, that's not bad. The problem on this one is the variability in that process is huge. Now I've only got 2 production orders. If I had 200, this number would be very scary because that's telling me I'm 8 sigmas out, which means every time I do this operation, I'm taking a different amount of time to do it. And that's bad because that means, hey, if Joe does it, he does it in an hour. Fred does it, it takes him 2 hours, and Jill does it and takes her, 15 minutes. that's a problem. So this tool does allow you to narrow into or dive into where you have issues within your facility, both just on the absolute time and also the amount of variability you have within your processes. Now that's one type of report. The other type of reports that we have, this is just a sample. We can get you the code for this, this Power BI report, but basically all the reporting you're doing from shop floor is coming out of a single table within the system. And almost everything you need to do that reporting comes out of that one table. So you can dump it to Excel, you can use Power BI, whatever. Makes it very easy to report and analyze the data. So this sample Power BI report here just has a number of different views in it. Things like your productivity, right? So my non-productive time compared to my productive time. And, that's a pretty obvious one. This is really bad. And the cool thing about, Power BI is you can do things like, say, I'll give it a sec here to load up. But let's say I want more information about why that productivity is low. So I could say, total productive hours, by month, right? And, that's pretty good. But maybe for a specific employee, right? Maybe I'm looking at employee review, and I can see the total productive hours by month for a specific employee. So it's kind of nice how you can do that with Power BI. But anyway, I'm getting off topic there. You can do lots of reporting with the system. And one of the interesting ones here is this hours by activity code as well, because this tells me what people actually put their time against in the shop floor. And you'll see there's the rework down here. Now, if I have that classified by root cause code, like where I had in the scanning, I classified some as sales or engineering or whatever, I could drill down on this 53 hours and find out exactly what that root cause was for that rework, right? Was it sales? Was it engineering? What do I need to focus my time on to fix that rework problem? Okay. And pay code, this is good for operational, but it's also good for, payroll type stuff where I can see how much, overtime or double time I'm paying, those sorts of things. Like if I got a ton of overtime, maybe I need to start running a second shift or something like that. And then one of the more interesting ones is this, it's hours by month, this guy here, because this is just a pivot table. And if I open this up in Excel, what's kind of cool is, this is doing it by document number. So this is the job and then the employee number. But if I want to flip that around, I can just drag over and do it by machine center or work center. And all of a sudden, now I've got a utilization report, right? I can see how many hours were put against a specific machine over a period of time. So I can use that for determining, do I decommission that asset or what do I do with it, or what's my burden supposed to be based on the hours I put against it. So it makes it really, really easy to do those types of reports just in a pivot table format by dragging and dropping that in Excel. Okay, so reporting is very strong, or the ability to do that reporting is very easy, and you can create very strong reports with the solution. All right, so I think I've talked myself out there. Let's jump back into this thing and talk about, what it's going to cost you to set a solution like this up. Again, sometimes even just that ability to track rework pays for itself. Even the the manual labor entry for entering the time and things like that immediately pays for it. But the cost of it, it's a declining scale. So I think the minimum number of employees is 10. But as you go up, once you get up to a certain number of employees, it's $3.60 a month per employee is what you pay for that solution. And I guarantee you it's going to save you more than double that every month per employee by implementing a system like this. The terminals, so if you have fixed terminals out there, Microsoft does want a device license. So you don't need a license for every employee. So if I've got 50 employees in the shop, they do not need 50 Business Central licenses. You need a concurrent device for each terminal, which means if I have 10 terminals out there, I probably only need 5 device licenses from Microsoft because I might only have 5 of those things in active use at any given time. If you only ever have 2 in active use at any given time, you need 2 device licenses from Microsoft, and they're much less expensive than a full user license. For implementation, we do a fixed price implementation. So we'll do, everything, training, configuration, support, all that kind of stuff at a fixed price. So that's easy to budget for. And then the terminals that you're dealing with, again, usually a few $100. The barcode scanner is, probably half of that. And then a Chrome book or just a thin client PC with a, consumer grade monitor. That's really all you need. And you've got your terminals set up out on the shop floor. Okay. Now, if you go through your partner or come to us directly, we can get your quote on everything. We do the barcode scanners for the stations, but whether you use a Windows 10 PC or Chromebook or whatever, you'd get that hardware. That's just commodity stuff. You'd find that. We can sell you the barcode scanner if you like. But once you've got a quote on the license and implementation cost, you can actually go to our website, and there's a return on investment calculator there. You just go to the main site. I'll show you. I'll give you a link in a sec. And you can fill in all the details, and it'll tell you how long it's going to take you to pay back the cost of that purchase. And usually what we're seeing is far less than 12 months. It usually is 6 months or less before the system pays for itself. And the rest of that time is just gravy. It's just pure benefit to the bottom line. We also have an Excel version of that. If you'd like to get that, email us, and we can send that off to you, and you can pass that around to people in your organization. All right. Now with that, if you do need additional information, you can go to shopfloor4dynamics.com, and on there's videos like this one and on more in-depth videos on specific features, all that kind of stuff, a connect button, and also a link to our knowledge base that has a lot more detail, tons of videos on there on how to use the system, user guides, implementation help, all that kind of stuff is on the knowledge base. Just hit the support button on that website and you'll get all that detail from there. All right, for that, thanks everybody, and hopefully we'll be talking again soon. If you're attending Summit next week or Directions in France the week after or 2 weeks after, hopefully I'll get to meet you in person. All right, thanks everybody.
Hey, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel for more great content.